You wake up feeling exhausted. Not just tired, but hollow. Like something was drained out of you during the night. You slept 7 hours, maybe 8. You didn't run a marathon. You didn't face a war. And yet, you open your eyes, already losing. Most people will tell you it's stress, or diet, or your sleep cycle. But what if it's none of those? What if something far more subtle, far more insidious, is quietly siphoning off your energy, not your calories or your physical strength, but the deeper fuel, your life force? This isn't science fiction. No shadowy vampire. No wires in the back of your head. Just modern life. Because in today's world, your energy is a currency, and someone is always collecting. They don't steal it with force. They don't need to. They've engineered a system that makes you give it up willingly, even gratefully. Scroll, click, react, scroll again. Every ping on your phone, every targeted ad, every scroll down the infinite feed is another thread wrapping around your attention. Not because the content is meaningful, but because distraction itself is profitable. You are tired not because you did too much, but because you did too little of what truly matters. Your willpower was siphoned away, one notification at a time. Your focus fragmented into 1,000 micro-decisions that had no payoff. And your time, the most irreplaceable thing you have, was devoured by machines that understand your brain better than you do. This is not accidental. Algorithms are designed to bypass your conscious defenses. They know how to trigger your dopamine, how to provoke outrage, how to seduce your primal brain. Over time, your inner fire, the drive to create, to act, to dream, is dimmed. And the worst part, you don't notice it, because the theft is invisible. It doesn't take your money. It takes your ability to use your money wisely. It doesn't erase your dreams. It just makes you too numb, too distracted, too tired to chase them. So ask yourself, who benefits when you're exhausted? Who profits when you can't think clearly? Who gains when you stop asking deep questions and just keep scrolling? This is not a glitch in the system. This is the system. And unless you recognize the theft, you can never reclaim what's yours. You were not born to be harvested for clicks, sold for data, or trained to crave dopamine like a lab rat. You were born to direct your life force, not have it drained. This isn't about technology being evil. It's about power, control, ownership. So before we go further, before we dive into the psychology, the history, and the dark mechanics behind this invisible theft, you need to understand one thing. What's being stolen isn't just your attention, it's your future, your peace, your energy. And now that you've seen the theft, the question becomes, what will you do to stop it? Theme: historical origins of energy, parasitism, kings, cults, and control mechanisms. We like to believe we've progressed, that we've moved beyond the primitive rituals and barbaric hierarchies of our ancestors. But behind the polished glass of modernity lies a haunting truth. We've simply traded old chains for new ones. And the theft of human energy, attention, obedience, willpower, didn't vanish with the fall of empires. It evolved. Let's rewind history. Imagine a priest standing atop a blood-stained altar in ancient Mesoamerica. Below, a crowd chants in euphoric submission as a heart is ripped from a living body, not for cruelty, but to feed the gods. But who truly gained power here? Was it the deities, or the high priests orchestrating the fear? Ancient rulers understood something we've forgotten, that control over the body is fleeting, but control over belief is eternal. In the Egyptian dynasties, pharaohs weren't just kings, they were gods in flesh. Their power didn't rely on armies alone, but on a belief system so deeply embedded that questioning it felt like blasphemy. That belief generated obedience, and obedience produced energy. Rituals, hierarchies, divine laws, all psychological mechanisms designed to harvest spiritual devotion and mental submission. Fast forward to medieval Europe. The Catholic Church rose as a spiritual empire, wielding more influence than kings. Salvation was not a matter of personal virtue, but of obedience to authority. Fear of damnation became a psychological leash. Confession, indulgences, inquisitions, each system wasn't just about theology. It was about power, about extracting energy through fear, guilt, and eternal surveillance. The clergy fed not on blood, but on the mental and emotional surrender of millions. Even in tribal societies, shamans often held power by channeling fear of nature, of spirits, of death. The medicine man wasn't just a healer, he was a gatekeeper of cosmic safety. You obeyed not because of reason, but because your very survival, physical and spiritual, seemed to depend on it. Again, the same pattern. Extract energy not through brute force, but through belief, dependence, fear. Now, look at the pattern across continents, centuries, and systems. A small group learns how to manipulate psychological levers. They create a mythology, an ideology, a structure. The masses follow, fearing the consequences of disobedience or hoping for salvation. Energy is channeled upward. Loyalty, time, focus, life. But here's the sinister twist. The methods became more elegant, more invisible. As societies modernized, the same parasitic dynamics adapted. The guillotine and crusade were replaced by subtler tools: media, education, entertainment, bureaucracy. Less blood, more distraction. Less punishment, more programming. Today, the modern high priests don't wear robes. They wear suits. They don't demand worship. They manufacture consent. Instead of altars, we have screens. Instead of divine punishment, we have social cancellation. Instead of sacred texts, we have algorithms shaping belief. But the result is the same, a transfer of energy. Consider how attention has become the most valuable currency in the world. Not gold, not land, attention. And why? Because attention is energy. Where your focus goes, your life flows. And corporations, governments, and ideologies have mastered how to harvest it. The scrolling thumb is the modern prayer. The news cycle is the new gospel. The influencer is the new prophet. And behind it all, unseen, are systems designed to keep you addicted, anxious, compliant, and most importantly, exhausted. This isn't paranoia. This is architecture. A design inherited from centuries of psychological warfare. Ancient cults drained belief. Medieval empires drained fear. Modern systems drained focus. The vampire hasn't died. It's gone digital. And here's the terrifying brilliance. Today's parasitism is disguised as choice. You think you're choosing to check your phone? You think you're choosing your beliefs? But each choice is pre-engineered by the very systems that profit from your distraction. You become the willing participant in your own depletion. What we're experiencing isn't just a personal burnout. It's a civilizational one, a slow, methodical extraction of collective human energy by entities that understand exactly how belief systems work, not to liberate, but to control. So when we look at history, we must ask, not how far have we come, but how deep have we fallen under a different kind of spell. Because perhaps progress was never about freedom. Perhaps it was about upgrading the tools of obedience. From sword and sermon to screen and signal. And unless we recognize the parasitic lineage we are part of, we won't break the cycle. We'll simply keep feeding it with every scroll, every click, every anxious thought we didn't choose for ourselves. What if the real battlefield is not in the streets, not in governments, not even in wars, but inside your own mind? What if your most sacred asset, your attention, has become the currency of an invisible economy? An economy that feeds on your emotions, manipulates your beliefs, and shapes your desires, all without you ever signing a contract. This isn't metaphor, it's business. A trillion-dollar industry engineered to turn your consciousness into profit. Social platforms, advertising agencies, entertainment companies, and even ideological movements, all competing in a silent war for your mind, not to serve you, but to extract from you. We live in a world where the most valuable resource isn't oil, gold, or even data. It's you. Not your labor, not your money, but your focus, your emotional reaction, your belief in a story. You think you're scrolling through Instagram or watching YouTube for entertainment, but behind the scenes, machine learning algorithms are watching you more closely than any spy agency ever could. Every second you pause on a video, every image that makes you linger, every comment you like, every post you share, all of it feeds a behavioral model designed to predict, then direct, your behavior. And this is not random. It's precise, clinical, weaponized psychology. Back in the 1950s, behaviorist B.F. Skinner showed how animals could be conditioned with reward systems, lights, levers, food pellets. Fast forward to today, you are the subject, and your phone is the cage. Dopamine becomes your treat. Likes become validation. Scrolls become addiction. You've been conditioned, not just for entertainment, but for compliance. The platforms you think are free, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, aren't free at all. If you're not paying, you are the product. You are the currency being traded, not just your data, but your state of mind. Ever noticed how after spending time online, you feel drained? It's not accidental. You're not just absorbing content. You're being subtly manipulated, emotionally pulled, fragmented. 1 minute you're laughing at a meme. The next, you're triggered by a political video, then distracted by beauty standards, then sold an ideal life you can never quite reach. Every shift is calibrated to stimulate, then exhaust, your nervous system. To keep you engaged, not informed, addicted, not awakened. It's called doom scrolling for a reason. Meanwhile, the news outlets aren't just reporting facts, they're crafting narratives. Fear is the product, outrage is the hook. Headlines are engineered to spike cortisol, fuel tribalism, and keep you in a constant state of emotional reactivity. Because a reactive brain is a predictable brain, and a predictable brain is easier to control, market to, and divide. And what about influencers? The modern priesthood of lifestyle illusion. They sell more than products. They sell meaning. They sell identity. A curated persona designed to evoke envy, aspiration, and inadequacy. So you buy. By the makeup, by the mindset, by the myth that you're not enough as you are. Advertising isn't just selling shoes or phones. It's selling belief systems. It's telling you who to be, how to think, what success looks like, what happiness should feel like. Not with force, but with repetition. And repetition creates reality. Psychologist Robert Cialdini called it social proof, the idea that we assume truth based on popularity. So when you see something with millions of likes, your brain concludes it must be valid. Your beliefs are now crowdsourced. And belief, once outsourced, becomes another tool of manipulation. It's not just attention that's being extracted. It's your willpower, your emotional resilience, your clarity of thought. You start the day with intention, maybe to read, to create, to think, but before long, you're derailed by a notification, a controversy, a fear trigger. By night, you're depleted, scattered, unsure what happened. You didn't choose your day. It was chosen for you. Hijacked in tiny moments. This is not a glitch. It's the design, and we've normalized it. We call it staying connected, being informed, entertainment. But the truth is more sinister. It's a subtle slavery. Not through chains or force, but through consent, through seduction, through the illusion of choice. They don't need to imprison your body if they can colonize your attention. And attention is only the beginning, because what you give attention to, you give power to. Your attention shapes your thoughts shape your emotions shape your actions create your life. So if someone can direct your attention, They can design your destiny. Think about that. If every scroll is a vote for the world you live in, whose world are you voting for? The question isn't whether you're being influenced. The question is, by whom, and for what purpose? Because in this world, consciousness is currency, and the price of ignorance is enslavement. But once you see the mechanism, once you name it, you begin to take back power. To reclaim your mind is the first act of rebellion, and it starts with awareness. You wake up already tired, not just in the body, but somewhere deeper, in the mind, in the soul, a kind of weariness that sleep doesn't cure. And you start to wonder, is it me? Am I weak, lazy, unmotivated? No, you are not broken. You are being drained. In the modern world, tiredness has been weaponized. It's no longer just about physical labor or long hours. It's psychological warfare, slow, invisible, and relentless. Let's begin with something called decision fatigue. Every choice you make, from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you scroll one last time before sleep, costs energy. What to wear, what to eat, which message to reply to, which notification to ignore, what to believe. Every micro-decision chips away at your clarity, and in a world where you're forced to make thousands of them daily, your brain burns out, not from complexity, but from clutter. Now add to that ego depletion, a psychological phenomenon where the more you exert self-control, the weaker your ability becomes to maintain it, resisting sugar, biting your tongue, staying calm in chaos, focusing while being constantly interrupted. All of it draws from the same internal battery. You live in a world that requires constant restraint, not because you're flawed, but because you're surrounded by noise designed to provoke you. The fatigue is not random, it's engineered. Let's talk about alert fatigue, the constant ping of notifications, alarms, reminders, emails, alerts. These are not tools of convenience. They're tools of cognitive sabotage. Every ping hijacks your attention. Every red bubble spikes your cortisol. Your brain was not designed for this. It evolved to focus on one threat, one task, one moment. But now, you're asked to be everywhere, all the time, and it's tearing you apart from the inside. But here's the darker truth. This exhaustion serves a purpose. In a state of constant fatigue, you are easier to manage. You don't question. You don't resist, you agree, you comply, and you spend. You're told to hustle, to grind, to maximize productivity, but what you're not told is that this narrative of productivity is a trap, a carrot on a stick. You're not building an empire, you're maintaining someone else's. Consider your workplace. Endless meetings that drain, not inspire, vague goals, artificial urgency, performative busyness. These aren't flaws in the system. They are the system. A system designed to keep you just tired enough to keep moving, but never energized enough to break free. Or look at consumer culture. You're sold the cure to your fatigue in the very products that deepen it. Fast food for convenience, but it inflames the body. Entertainment for relaxation, but it floods your brain with empty stimulation. Self-help content that promises motivation, but delivers guilt. You're stuck in a loop where every solution is another drain. Even your leisure is monetized. Binge watching, scrolling, streaming. These aren't rest. They're distraction. They numb you, but they don't restore you. And the fatigue continues, disguised as choice. But the most sinister fatigue is emotional. You live in a world that constantly manipulates your emotions. Fear from the news, envy from social media, pressure from comparisons. Your nervous system is in a permanent state of low-grade panic, fight or flight, all the time. And no one can survive that without breaking, so you start to think you're lazy, unfocused, inadequate. But you're not. You are exhausted, because you are under siege. This isn't a failure of willpower. It's the outcome of invisible systems that exploit your biology. Because a tired population is a manageable one. You don't rebel when you're running on fumes. But here's the paradox. Once you see it, you can begin to free yourself. Fatigue loses its grip when it's named. When you realize your tiredness is a response, not a weakness, you begin to reclaim your attention. You start protecting your time. You learn to say no, not just to people, but to demands that drain your soul. You create space for boredom, for silence, for stillness, not as laziness, but as resistance. You rest not to return to productivity, but to return to yourself, because the truth is, clarity is a threat to control. A well-rested mind is harder to manipulate. A soul at peace is harder to enslave. And that's why your exhaustion was never accidental. It was designed. But design can be reversed, and awareness is the beginning. You wake up and check your phone. Without thinking, you scroll. Without choosing, you absorb. Headlines, images, trending content all flowing into your mind, like a river you didn't ask to swim in. And yet, you believe you're making choices. You believe you're in control. But what if you're not? What if your so-called free will is just a well-crafted illusion? From the moment you're born, you inherit more than just genetics. You inherit scripts. Scripts about who you are, what's right and wrong, what to believe, who to trust, and how to behave. You're given a name before you can speak. You're handed a religion before you can think. You're placed in an education system that doesn't ask, who are you? But rather, how can we mold you? We are not taught to ask questions. We are taught to memorize answers. In this framework, curiosity becomes rebellion, and rebellion becomes dysfunction. So, we adapt, we comply, not out of choice, but out of conditioning. Language itself becomes a cage. Words shape thoughts. But what if the vocabulary we've been taught only allows certain thoughts? In 1984, Orwell described Newspeak, a language designed to limit expression and reduce rebellion. But here's the unsettling part. We already live in a world of mental shorthand, buzzwords, cliches, hashtags. Our inner worlds are reduced to bite-sized slogans, making complex thought nearly impossible. You don't think in ideas, you think in templates. The media doesn't just report news, it installs narratives. It manufactures consensus. A crisis appears on your screen, and you feel fear or sympathy or outrage. As directed, you didn't choose those emotions. They were triggered, on cue, and repetition seals the programming. The same stories, the same villains, the same heroes until your beliefs feel self-made, even though they were carefully planted. Consider the algorithms that now dictate your digital life. You like one video. You follow one account. Suddenly, your feed narrows. Your worldview shrinks. You see only what the system predicts you'll like. But prediction is control in disguise. You are not exploring. You are being herded. Free will implies agency. But when your preferences are engineered, when your decisions are influenced before you're even aware of them, what remains of your agency? Psychologists have shown how easily we can be primed. A single word can change our decisions. A slight suggestion can shift our choices. We believe we're logical, but we're mostly reactive. We say we want things, but often we've just been subtly told to. Even your aspirations, your definition of success, happiness, status are programmed. You're encouraged to want a career, a house, a partner, children, financial security. But rarely are you asked, is this your desire? Or society's expectation coded into your psyche? Would you still want those things if you had never seen them rewarded? The most effective systems of control aren't violent. They're invisible. When control feels natural, you don't resist. When the prison is built in your mind, you don't try to escape. You'll even defend it. And so, here you are living a life that feels chosen, but was largely designed. A name chosen for you. A language shaped before you could object. Beliefs absorbed long before you understood them. A digital world that adapts to your past behavior to dictate your future one. And yet, you feel free. That's the brilliance and tragedy of it. But awareness is the first fracture in the illusion. To question the script is to begin writing your own. True freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about knowing why you want what you want, and who programmed that desire in the first place. So the next time you make a decision, pause. Ask, is this me, or the system speaking through me? Because the greatest rebellion in a programmed society is to think a thought that wasn't planted. There are wounds that never bleed, but they ache all the same. You walk away from a conversation, not angry, not hurt, just tired, as if something was quietly extracted from you. And it was. We often talk about burnout like it's caused only by work, screens, deadlines, or capitalism. But sometimes, it's a person who walks into the room with a smile, but leaves you feeling hollow. These are not always villains. Sometimes they're friends, family, even lovers. They don't always shout or manipulate openly. Some of them don't even realize what they're doing. But they are draining you, not of your time or your money, but of your energy. The term energy vampire sounds dramatic, even mystical. But it's simply the name for people who feed on your attention, your empathy, your emotional labor. They walk into your life with an unfillable need for control, for validation, for drama, and they use your presence to meet it. This isn't just spiritual metaphor. Psychology has names for them: covert narcissists, chronic victims, emotional black holes, people locked in cycles of neediness, manipulation, or chaos that pull others into their gravity. Their tactics are subtle, a sigh heavy enough to prompt concern, a crisis that always requires your help, a passive-aggressive jab disguised as a joke, a compliment that turns into a competition. You give, they take. You explain, they deflect. You set a boundary, they make you feel guilty for it. What makes this dangerous is not the event, it's the pattern. The slow erosion of your emotional equilibrium. You begin doubting yourself, feeling guilty for needing space, questioning whether you're too cold or too selfish, until your life begins orbiting around their moods, their stories, their emergencies. And that's where trauma bonds form. A trauma bond isn't love, it's not loyalty. It's chemistry based on survival. It's the psychological hook formed when intermittent affection is mixed with emotional instability. One moment they're sweet, the next they're distant. One day you're their hero, the next their enemy. You stay, not because it feels good, but because leaving feels worse. But here's the brutal truth. Not every person in your life wants you to grow, because your growth might mean their loss of control. Your peace might expose their chaos. Your self-respect might shatter the dynamic that once served them. This is where the concept of energetic hygiene becomes essential. Just like we wash our hands and brush our teeth, we need to clean our emotional field. Ask yourself, who in your life makes you feel lighter, calmer, more grounded, and who makes you feel drained, confused, or small? The problem is, we've been taught to be nice rather than to be well. We tolerate rudeness under the label of honesty. We excuse guilt-tripping as concern. We normalize dysfunction because it's familiar. But every moment spent in the company of a psychological vampire is a moment where you are not with yourself. Because these people don't just take your energy, they replace it with their own narratives, their fears, their needs. Over time, you lose your voice, trying to speak their language. You forget what your peace feels like. It's time to reclaim it. You are not obligated to stay in a connection that drains you, no matter who it is. You do not owe your well-being to someone else's dysfunction. You can love people and still love yourself enough to create distance. You can care without carrying. Psychological vampires often don't look like monsters. They can be charming, intelligent, even wounded. But that doesn't mean they have the right to feed on your spirit. Your energy is sacred. And the more you protect it, the more clearly you'll see who respects it and who doesn't. The next time you feel inexplicably tired after an interaction, pause. That's not weakness. That's data. Your body is telling you something your mind might still be rationalizing. Listen to it, because not all energy theft comes from the system. Sometimes, it's sitting right across from you, smiling, talking, taking, and the first step to healing is learning how to stop bleeding where no wound is visible. They took your attention, then your time, then your sense of self. But the worst theft was so subtle, you didn't even notice. They drained your energy, not in one sweeping act, but in 1,000 microscopic leaks. A scroll here, a conversation there, a yes when you meant no. Reclaiming your energy isn't about building walls. It's about remembering who you were before the noise took over. This isn't spiritual fluff. It's psychological surgery. First, let's define the battlefield. Your energy is not infinite. It's not some airy-fairy mysticism. It's biological, neurological, emotional. Your nervous system can only process so much. Your attention, a scarce and precious resource, is constantly under siege. The modern world is an extraction economy, but it no longer digs gold. It digs your focus, and once it has that, your emotions follow. Then your choices, then your identity. So how do you fight back? Not with anger, not with paranoia, but with precision. Start with boundaries, not just with people, but with inputs. A boundary is not a wall to keep others out. It's a filter to decide what gets in. Protect your mornings like sacred ground. That first hour before the world reaches you is where your subconscious is still malleable. Feed it silence. Feed it intention. Not a feed filled with someone else's agenda. Holmes once said, "My mind rebels at stagnation." But stagnation today is masked as stimulation. We're drowning in content, but starving for clarity. Which brings us to solitude. Not isolation, solitude. The conscious choice to be with yourself, without the need to perform, produce, or please. Carl Jung called this the withdrawal of projections. You stop assigning your chaos to the world, and begin confronting your own. In that space, something remarkable happens. You begin to remember what actually matters to you. Not what's trending, not what others expect, but what you value. Values are not inherited, they're excavated beneath layers of programming, family expectations, cultural scripts. There's a truth that's yours alone, and living according to that truth, that's energy protection in its purest form. Because nothing drains a soul faster than living someone else's idea of a meaningful life. Viktor Frankl, in his darkest moments in a concentration camp, discovered this, that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies your freedom. That space is sacred. But in modern life, it's buried under dopamine, notifications, snacks, likes, pings, pleasures without meaning. It's not that dopamine is bad, it's that we've become addicts to stimulation without integration. Every hit of distraction fragments your inner cohesion, until you no longer know what you want. You only know what's being offered. That's why a dopamine detox isn't about punishment. It's about recalibration. It's choosing to feel boredom long enough to hear your own voice again. Now, let's talk about grounding. Not in the spiritual sense, in the nervous system sense. The world constantly pulls you into abstraction. The news, debates, narratives. Grounding pulls you back into the body. Breathe, touch earth, walk slowly, feel the wind. These aren't just poetic practices. They reset your nervous system. They return you to presence, and presence is the antidote to manipulation. Minimalism, too, is a form of psychological armor. Not just fewer things, but fewer obligations, fewer mental tabs open, fewer internal conflicts. When your environment is clear, your mind can rest, and when your mind rests, your energy regenerates. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Burnout isn't just from overwork. It's from disconnection, from self-betrayal, from spending your days in tasks that your soul didn't sign up for. To reclaim your energy, you must reclaim your decisions. Ask yourself, is this mine? This goal, this belief, this friendship, this path? Did I choose it? Or did I inherit it? And if it wasn't a conscious choice, it's time to release it. Because every unconscious commitment is a siphon. When you strip away what isn't yours, what remains is not emptiness, it's essence. Your true energy source, unfiltered, undistorted. This is the quiet revolution, not flashy, not loud, but real. It's a life designed intentionally, by you, for you, with awareness as your compass, and peace as your North Star. So no, you don't need to escape to a forest. You don't need to chant mantras on mountaintops. You just need to pause, choose, protect, because in a world designed to distract, protecting your energy is the most radical act of all. They don't take your energy with force. They wait for you to hand it over. Every distraction, every outrage, every endless scroll is not random. It's designed, because the more exhausted you are, the less dangerous you become. The more addicted you are, the less you question. The more confused you are, the more obedient you stay. And in that haze of fatigue, emotional manipulation, and dopamine addiction, your life force leaks. Not all at once, but slowly, invisibly, silently, until one day, you realize, you've been surviving, but not living. So ask yourself, who benefits when you're too tired to think? Who wins when you're too distracted to dream? Who gains when you're angry, reactive, divided, and no longer sovereign? The answer is not just the system. It's every institution that thrives on your unconscious compliance. It's every machine that grows stronger when you remain unaware of your own power. And it's every person, product, and platform that profits. From your disconnection from yourself, you weren't born with chains, but over time, they were draped on you. One screen at a time, one belief at a time, one fear at a time, and yet, they never forced them on you. They simply waited for you to forget that your energy was sacred. Energy is not just what powers your body, it's what fuels your focus, your creativity, your rebellion, your intuition, your clarity. It is the divine spark behind every invention, every revolution, every act of love, and every moment of awakening. So let's be brutally honest. If your energy is fire, what have you been setting on fire lately? Your future, or your feed, your potential, or your performance for approval, your power, or your persona? Because here's the truth, you've been conditioned to forget. Your energy is currency, and every second you spend, whether in outrage, fear, comparison, or performance, is a transaction. You are paying someone, something, somewhere, with the most priceless thing you own, your attention. They don't want your money, they want your mind. Because, if they can rent your awareness, they can own your reality. And once they control what you see, they control what you think is possible. That's how empires are built. Not through brute force, but through consent. Consent that's been slowly extracted, while you were busy reacting. But here's what they fear most. A human being who remembers that silence is strength, that stillness is power, that presence is revolution. They fear the one who no longer argues, but observes, who no longer conforms, but creates, who no longer chases, but chooses. They fear the one who stops participating in their game and starts writing new rules. That's when the system shakes. Because control doesn't break when you fight it. It breaks when you withdraw your fuel from it. You don't need to burn it down. You need to stop feeding it. You don't need louder outrage. You need deeper understanding. You don't need more followers. You need more alignment. Because the greatest revolution is not outside of you. It's the moment you say, no more. No more letting exhaustion be your normal. No more letting confusion be your compass. No more letting validation be your drug. No more letting fear be your master. This isn't about anger. This is about clarity. You do not owe your energy to systems that do not honor your soul. You do not owe your time to people who drain your purpose. You do not owe your magic to machines that monetize your misery. You were not made to survive. You were made to ignite. Like fire, your energy was meant to warm, to light, to transform, but also to destroy illusions, to burn away the noise, to blaze through the darkness. So use it wisely and fiercely and truthfully. Your attention is sacred. Your focus is fuel. Your life force is a gift. And if you've forgotten that, it's not your fault. But now you remember. And when you remember, you stop being a consumer. You become a creator. You stop being a pawn. You become the player. You stop being asleep. You wake up, and when you wake up, they lose. So protect your energy, not with walls, but with wisdom, not with fear, but with focus, not with force, but with fire, because they've stolen enough. Now you protect it, not with anger, but with clarity.